Every business in the world needs to make decisions. Are you going to go left? Are you going to go right? Some are more important than others. On today's episode, I had the pleasure of welcoming on Quentin Kasseh, the co-founder of Syntaxia. They're here to help you make decisions better. They work with Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, helping them understand and make decisions better in their business. These decisions don't just cost companies millions, they cost them billions in prediction. Imagine being able to make sure or make predictions on your business that are underpinned by accurate data, giving you different pathways and options. Thinking about moving into a different niche, well, they'll be able to help you do that. This man is honestly one of the most intelligent guys I've ever had on this podcast, so you'll learn a ton. As always, if you enjoy this podcast, give it a like, share it to a friend. As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm JT Story, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy. Quentin, welcome to the Grappling Growth podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Quentin, I'm curious, what does growth look like to you?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, growth is definitely an evolving state. So growth personally for me is something that we can all relate to. So let's start with that. So being better this year than I was last year, that's definitely important. Growth at the company, well, you can ask me that question depending on where we are. So at this stage, and I've been with multiple companies in different stages, but at this stage in my current company, we want to go GA with our product, and that to me is very important.
And for you, just kind of delving into that, when you say you want to go GA with our product, what has 2026 looked like for you guys so far?
All right, so it's actually a fun story. We started building our product, and maybe I'll take a quick sentence to explain what we are. Syntaxia is a decision intelligence platform, and we've been building toward this for the last 18 months, right? In January, Gartner announced their first ever Magic Quadrant. They called it Decision Intelligence Platforms. So basically, they named the category where we are. So our bet was a good bet. In March, we launched our first cut of the product. In April, we signed a contract with a Fortune 1000 company. And in June, we went live with them, and it's been successful. So the journey was really from zero to now we're getting to that place where we have design partners on the platform. We want to go general availability, basically bring the product GA to the market to everyone before the end of the year, so that we share with them the value that we already shared with some of the Fortune 500 and 1000 customers.
And let's just say I'm an entrepreneur listening to this podcast, detailing exactly what you do. What is the core value proposition you're bringing to the market right now?
So Syntaxia is a decision intelligence platform. Companies, they run on decisions, and decisions run on shared meaning. So what we do is we model the decision that matter, run them on a time-aware knowledge graph that knows what things mean and how that meaning changed over time, and keep every decision monitored and auditable. So we start with the systems of record, we put them in our time-aware knowledge graph. We have a decision intelligence framework that runs on composite AI. Composite AI, it's a term that basically means we're composing different AI workloads. Specifically in our case, we have graph AI workloads, we have optimization, simulation, and machine learning. Those are 4 separate AI engines, and they are glued together via the fifth one, which is LLMs. So LLMs is our glue between these different engines, and we present to them decisions. These decisions are important in any business, actually. As I said, companies run on decisions in any department, from go-to-market to operations to administrative. You have to make a decision. That decision usually and traditionally has been based on meetings, and usually it's the last person in the meeting saying what they need to do and they agree with it. But formally, decisions should have a specific framework. And we can talk about that framework. But what we present is basically that decision intelligence for a specific set of business functions in the business. We're starting with go to market because we've seen that's the highest friction, but also we have a funded buyer, it's independent, it's easy to show them the value quickly, but we're moving toward other areas of the business.
So just looking at that framework, because I think what you're talking about is applicable, as you said, to every division of a company, and every company. You have strategic pathways in everything you do, decision trees. How does that framework apply? Let's just take go-to-market, for instance. We're a go-to-market consultancy. So if we were to look at it as like a live case study, what would you be looking at when, say, we were to work together?
Perfect. So our decision intelligence platform has have a capability. We call it Advantage. And Advantage is our way into making a decision from a perspective of from a certain perspective. So you have your data is all in the knowledge graph, and that Advantage gives you a certain decision. We start with um, top of the funnel all the way down to execution. So we have an ICP Advantage, an ideal customer profile Advantage for you that based on your historical performances across your systems of records, assuming those are CRM or multiple CRMs if you have multiple business units, we're able to tell you this is your ICP. It's not based on any other context. It's based on historical data. We go then to the coverage model and territory management. How should you cover, or how should you redistribute your reps? Do you need to hire more, reduce more, focus in certain areas or territories or segments? There's the third one, which is demand gen from the sales perspective and demand gen from the marketing perspective. And then this is from strategic, there is execution and performance intelligence or decisions that you need to make around team performance and team allocation, which is something that's still in progress. The three that I just mentioned are already in place. And the kind of decision you see is basically, let's take the ICP vantage point. We look at the historical data you have. In one of our customers, we have data going back to 2007. So we have years and years of data. We look at the most relevant time window. Like we see some changes. They moved they did some pivots into certain segments years ago and then came back and so on and so forth. But we look at that time and what we present to them. So this is what the user sees. He sees three sections. The first one is the decision. This is what you should do. These are the moves that you should make. Maybe you should get off, the decision could look like get off hospitality or get off insurance and move into hospitality and transportation. And these are the moves. 50% of your allocation in insurance should go away. You need to increase that allocation to transportation and this particular segment. And it explains that this decision is using the same inputs. Basically, if you have 100 reps, you still have 100 reps. Same coverage geographically. We're not changing any of that. It's just that particular parameter. Under that, this is where it gets exciting, is we shared with them the simulation of the decision based on two scenarios, one that's moderate and one that's aggressive with a confidence level. And we tell them, if you take this moderate move or set of moves, your win rate, volume, velocity, and duration will change this way over the next 4 quarters. And if you do the aggressive one with low confidence, maybe depending on the computation that we have or the simulation output, this is how it should look like. But the third one is if you remain on the status quo, this is what your win rate, volume, velocity, and duration would look like. That tells them what would happen if they commit to this decision, but it does not tell them why. And that's the third section. So when we go down a little bit, we can see the data and insights that explains how did we come up to that decision so they can understand it, explain it, and the exact moves they need to make in every scenario to commit to the decision. These are the exact accounts that you need to cancel or decommission. These are the exact lookalikes that you need to follow. And specifically, these are the firmographic and the buying persona that you need to attract in order to activate the decision. So basically, it's a full decision framework that starts with the decision, some scenarios, a simulation and forecast of what would happen if they commit to it, and why we came down to that position and how they can activate it.
Fascinating. I've got so many questions that have spun off from there, and I think these are what you're talking about. I can paint this back to a conversation I was having with my team, conversations we're having as a team right now. We had one this morning, and again, it's such a prevalent point in any vertical, but again, asking about go to market. We're at intersections. We target several different niches, verticals, and for us, we see more throughput in certain niches than others, which is natural, or the sales cycle is halved in certain spaces. And we're consistently, and that's what business is it's a game of speculative gambling. It's looking at, based off of the information and knowledge that you have right now, you're predicting what would happen if you were to go down into a certain pathway compared to another one, but without having the right data and information there, it's a speculation. But it sounds to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is what you're bringing to market is essentially a solution to that, or a very methodical framework that gives insight and data from, I assume, the past data from both companies, but also using the LLMs that it has and the access to the web. It's able to scan, understand, evaluate markets to make those informed decisions. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Yeah, with one correction is that we're not using LLMs to create data, or to scrap information or third-party information. The third part, every information that we have in our system is deterministic, meaning it comes from a system of record. It could be coming from your Salesforce environment if you're using a CRM or HubSpot. It could come also from data enrichment services like Zoom Info, DNB. It can come from GOM, from other systems, but it's all data that is coming from your systems of record. We're very careful about not generating or using speculative information that the user didn't provide. So the information that we use is your information. The decision that we use is a decision. Imagine that you had a team of large company would have a go-to-market team composed of a CRO, a CFO, RevOps executive, a bunch of managers. All of them are deciding from different perspectives, vantage points. One is focusing from the financial perspective. What's the budget we have? What's the forecast should look like? The other one is looking at market. How did we generate? How should we generate? Should we do trade shows? Should we do like these campaigns in a certain way? And the executive of the RevOps is focusing on improving and optimizing the reps distribution, the operations of revenue generation, and basically all of it by looking at certain metrics and KPIs. And these individuals, they have to debate with each other and try to come up with a good plan. And usually different people are using different decision frameworks. We humans use a decision framework anyway, right? So it comes back to the story that I remember is worth mentioning is Darwin created the first, in a way, decision intelligence framework, which was he was trying to make a decision: should I get married or not? And he had a column that has pros, a column that has cons, and he started listing cons. I'm gonna lose time with myself and things like that. And in pros, I think one that was funny is like, it's better than a dog anyway. So he had like two things, pros and cons, and he debated those two columns into coming down to the decision: I should get married. What we're doing is a much more sophisticated version of that, but we're looking at basically information that tells us about past performance from different perspectives, volume of deals, sizes of deals, velocity of closure, the duration, the win rate in a certain segment, or a segment could be an industry, it could be geography, it could be a set of teams that you have working with, it could be the buying persona. Do you have penetration here? All of that is taken into consideration in these different scenarios, presented nicely to the user, but the work at the back end is really heavy, right? So this is where we have mathematical optimization, which is very interesting. So this means that we have to use solvers to make this work. In certain cases, we have simulation. So simulation is basically simulating the outputs that we could have if we have different inputs. Optimization is similar, but optimization is the same inputs. We need to get to the best output. So we're fixing the inputs and we're trying to come up with the best way to come to achieve the best output. So all of those are in play to help the user see that decision or see the information that bubbles up to a particular decision they need to make. And the decision is board presentable, meaning it's defensible, goes down all the way to the systems of record. So what I said earlier, we have the vantage, explains the decision, the how we came to it, the forecast, the simulation of what would happen if you commit to it, how to commit to it. But if you want to go a level deeper, you can really go and see your exact record and the system of record of the accounts that led us to that decision. So if we said insurance is a bad segment, we can show you exactly those accounts in your systems of records. You may have like 3 CRMs, one for each entity you have globally. All of them are merged together in this knowledge graph, and we can show you in those 3 CRMs which ones are actually giving us this confidence. So we're using systems that the user have. We're using data that the user provides to come up with a decision that their humans, their executives would come up with if they had the time. But this happens really quick. So this is an overnight decision. You don't have to spend weeks in meetings and offsites and trying to debate every now and then with your executives.
How much of a game changer would it be for your business if you could learn from the same AI advisors as Tony Robbins, or the people who've been in close proximity to Dan Sullivan, famously the co-author of 10x is easier than 2x? Today's sponsor to the podcast is AI Simplifier. They have put together a 30-day roadmap program to help teach you how to implement AI into your business. They've helped people save 10 to 20 hours per week, add millions of dollars in additional revenue to businesses. And for those who listen to this podcast and decide to sign up with them, you will get a complimentary AI breakthrough session with Steve French, one of the co-founders, and myself to really pencil in and figure out what we can do with your business. Now, back to the episode. My mind's being blown. Just taking the conversation just back a little bit.
Yeah.
What one? And this is, I guess, a bit more of a personal lens. We're covering the business side of things here, but I love the mix, the juxtaposition here with talking about business and personal life and backstory. When we spoke, I asked you a question on our previous call. What country are you from? And we're from the same country, Tunisia. So salam is. Well, with that, I would love to kind of get a gist of your origin story. You mentioned you're in Tunisia, Arab Spring happened, you've been in the US, I believe, for 15, 16 years, you mentioned?
Yes.
What does that story look like?
Well, I'm from the island that Homer wrote about in the Iliads. So I'm from the island of Odysseus. It's Ulysses Island. It's called Jerba. We're on the southeast coast of Tunisia. I spent my youth, my teenage years there. But I've always loved to choose the country that I'll be from, right? I always remember the quote from, I think Reagan said this, but I'm not quite sure if that's the right president. But he said, "You can become French, but you will never become Frenchman. You can become English, but you will never become Englishman. But America is the only country where you can become American, be American, embrace to be American." And that resonated with me since I was a teenager. And I chose to be American. So it was my mission to be here. And I believe this is a great environment to start new things, to believe in that dream of building a family, building a legacy in this country. So I'm Tunisian by origins and roots, yes, but I chose to move to the US. I still have those roots, which is a nice thing here. You can still, be public about where you come from in this country. But the journey started in my teenage years. I went to the military academy, which was the only path or the best path to move to the US. I was great at school, so which was a good thing to help. That helped me a little bit. Later, some things, the journey kind of shifted a little bit, and I found myself in the private sector. I found myself in joining a startup. I chose to join a very interesting startup I learned about them in 2008. So this was over 20 years ago. And they were doing something that is extremely interesting. To this day, it's still very interesting. Those people are all over the world. They're world-class people. And right now, the same people are building a knowledge graph database, and more than a knowledge graph database, actually. It's a very interesting thing. So I chose to work with that group of people, introduced me to the world of ontologies and knowledge graph and declarative programming and all of the interesting things that help put us in a situation where we are today. And actually, it's the right time today to be in that space. And in that company, we were a young team or a small team, and we did well, grew the company to hundreds of people, got acquired in 2016. By that time, I was in the US already, but that put me in a good trajectory to move forward with my career and also see the enterprise world from a lens of now we are building products. We know what kind of products are actually interesting. That was a nice thing until to 2020 when at the end of 2020 November we had the LLMs being exposed to everyone, and that created a shift, and now we have to understand how to navigate this new world where AI is at the fingertips of everyone, whereas before we had intelligent algorithms. We have symbolic and non-symbolic intelligent algorithms. I mentioned machine learning, optimization, simulation. All of those are intelligent algorithms, but they're not accessible to everyone. LLMs made that shift. So now everyone can just use a phone and see some generated information that they've never thought about, and that created a shift. So that's the journey in a way, starting from an island, going all the way to this new world across the ocean, and in the world of business too.
For you, how difficult did you find it getting out of Tunisia and making it to the US? Because I know for a lot of Tunisians, Africans, the dream is to get to Europe or the United States, but quite often it is very improbable for people.
I can only speak of my experience, right? So my experience was I was deliberate about choosing the right or the best path that was available to me at the time. First, it was going to the military academy. There were a specific program that would allow me at least to spend some 4 years here in the US. Um, that pushed me into another trajectory when that door kind of shifted and closed to finding in the private sector. The best way to do it is to provide, in my opinion, like, and to provide unquestionable value to the right people, because the US remains a merit-based country. They don't really see backgrounds, they don't care about where you come from. As long as there's an exceptional value, you'd be able to get in, or at least have a door to get in. So I chose to work with a smart startup that required some interesting work that was not very easy to find for them. This is why they were looking all over the world. So I worked with colleagues from Tunisia, Greece, Sweden, Switzerland, like the Netherlands, all over the world. And then as we grow, and I learned that that small startup back in 2009, 2008, they had research partnerships with Oxford, Harvard, MIT, and Stanford, all trying to find the right people who can provide exceptional value. So if you can position yourself to be in that network, I don't think being here or moving from one country, moving locations, is the problem. So it becomes like an easy constraint that is solvable.
Yeah, yeah. I think to your point, most people, they have a dream, they have a goal of what they would like to achieve, but they don't reverse engineer, they don't backwards induct the pathway to achieve that goal. They just see it as, well, this is what I want, and then never actually lay out the roadmap for what they're looking to achieve. And it sounds to me as though you clearly saw that you need to enter the military and you knew the program, the pathway to spend 4 years in the US and then expand from there. And I think that example is applicable to so many different realms of life. Starting a business, trying to get your first job. There are tons of people now, postgraduates, really struggling for a job, but I don't think they ask themselves the right question or take a step back to then assess and understand the pathway to get a job. They just spray and pray, hope something comes in, and then nothing comes in, and they haven't taken the time to. We're talking about anecdotal quotes. They say, if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. Most people just get the axe, it's really blunt, hitting the tree, and they wonder why nothing actually works.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know why that is, but I think that's a thing of life. Basically, trying to understand or visualize where you would be in a certain time is very interesting. I think what's challenging is to see clearly at a long time horizon. So you can see yourself by the end of the year. That's probably everyone can do. By the end of the week, obviously, like, oh, the weekend, I know exactly what I'm doing. Extend that to a quarter, 6 months, 18 months, 5 years, 10 years, it gets blurry. But I think the right thing to do is to find the clear kind of a silhouette in that 10 year and push there. And from there, you can reverse engineer every step throughout that time horizon and understand and keep the path. I think the discipline is to keep the path. Because, Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. That would happen. You'll be punched in the face, the plan will shift, but you need to kind of recenter, go back to that main plan. Like, that's the direction.
So to ask you a question, what does your 10-year silhouette look like right now?
For the company, we have it actually public. So what we do is we have a 10-year target, a 3-year target, and 1-year target, and then we have quarterly rocks. So our 10-year is clear, it's big, it's ambitious, and we want to be considered as the technology of choice when it comes to decision intelligence, not as a small tool or a small toolkit or a technology that is helping with decisions, but really the main driver for decision intelligence across different workloads. We have a certain revenue in mind, we have a certain growth in mind. We shared it with everyone in the team so they know that's our target. It looks scary, obviously, like we want it to be specifically scary and ambitious. And I don't want to say it here publicly, but you can find it somewhere. But you'll see it. And because if I say it, you can say, "Oh, this is crazy. You want to be this big." That's what we want. I can tell you 3 years from now, we want to have a certain growth across the US market, the European market as well. But we want to expand across industries because we started with companies that are Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, but I want to go to the Fortune 5000. I want to go to everyone so they can get access to this intelligence. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be hard to access and with hard friction. That's the reason behind implementing these optimizers, the machine learning, the technology is stitched together so that it is streamlined to the user. They don't know that they are using world-class technology that is usually 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it was very hard to implement. You'd require teams of engineers, data scientists, and data engineers to implement. Right now, it's just available to you. That's what I want to do over the next 3 years.
And looking at the 10 and 3 year goal, I will go away, have a look at the 10-year goal because it's very intriguing and inspiring as well. What do you envision being a few of the biggest bottlenecks and roadblocks to hitting the 3-year vision?
So, recalling from our previous meetings, we have certain roadblocks that we have to overcome. One of them is expanding into certain industries require us to be meeting certain compliances, and that would be an interesting challenge to do. I've spent 4 years in financial services and tech, fintech, and I've seen how hard certain compliances are actually can become. So that would be an interesting challenge to overcome. It's compliance-wise. The other one is managing the cost of the infrastructure and the capital needed to manage this infrastructure and share it with our customers. It's still expensive to run these different simulations and optimizers. It's not something that is economically at this point accessible to the Fortune 5000 unless we change the business model in a certain way. So that's something that we have to figure out in the next 3 years. I think those two come to mind as the biggest ones for the next 3 years.
How much of a game changer would it be for your business if you could learn from the same AI advisors as Tony Robbins, or the people who've been in close proximity to Dan Sullivan, famously the co-author of 10x is easier than 2x? Today's sponsor to the podcast is AI Simplify. They have put together a 30-day roadmap program to help teach you how to implement AI into your business. They've helped people save 10 to 20 hours per week, add millions of dollars in additional revenue to businesses. And for those who listen to this podcast and decide to sign up with them, you will get a complimentary AI breakthrough session with Steve French, one of the co-founders, and myself to really pencil in and figure out what we can do with your business. Now, back to the episode. And I suppose that's where you see a lot of these tech companies, they're getting to democratization of their product. They realize in order to hit a level of critical scale, they need to figure out a unit economic price which is more viable. Direct to consumer, you look at with Claude, ChatGPT, $20 a month. They know at that point there's zero or next to no friction with people who are willing to pay for it. But they're looking at all of these price points and figuring out where can people actually afford, where it becomes a no-brainer. And to your point there, it's just figuring out those layers, getting away from or expanding from the Fortune 1000 to then the 5000. Are there plans to then also expand to SMEs, or is that nothing in the next 3 years?
I think so too. Yeah, that's gonna be it's part of that expansion plan. And we're reacting and adjusting based on like every year. So this year we have a certain target. And by the way, as I mentioned earlier, we signed a Fortune 500 customer just a few days ago, which is very good.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So we want to keep pushing with our primary target at this point, but we want to shift next year to the bigger audience in the same industry. The issue with the unit economics that we have right now is that we're self-funded. We don't have any VC funding or third-party funding, so we're growing organically. That's more dangerous for the competition, which currently we don't have any competition, but also it's more deliberate and intentional. If we had VC funding in another world, those brokers that I mentioned earlier would be probably made easier with more capital to achieve. More capital means more resources. We wouldn't have to worry about certain metrics or certain numbers. Growth would be the main driver, and that would make it basically easier for us, because right now we have to worry about growth, we have to worry about profitability, we have to worry about price of executions. The unit economics are very, very important for us at this point. So, but with a third party investment, some of those parameters could go away, or at least they will not be as critical to the survivability of the business. So the target would shift, but as long as we don't have VC funding, it's going to be going that way.
And have you been intentional about not raising external investment, or is that something that you're looking at in the
potentially in the future, that would be something we can look at. I wanted to grow and push this journey of Syntaxia as pure as possible, see how the actual market react to it instead of forcing something to the market. With VC funding, with VC funding, with third-party funding, there are certain metrics that could be, as I mentioned, obscured, or we don't have to pay attention to them, or we don't have to look at them. But doing this in a pure way, you'll face lots of problems that would make me, in a way, learn more from this experience. So I'm pushing this as much as I can organically, and then we'll see if the VC funding would help at some point. Yes, absolutely, I'm open to it.
Yeah, I think that you've probably spoken to as many, if not more, founders than I have, but there's tons of founders that I've spoken to who have taken external venture capital funding, and they said it's one of the worst decisions they've ever made for their business, because they've lost all the control that they needed, the speed of execution that they had, the vision for the business has been completely diluted, and they feel like they're handcuffed. So I suppose the process that you're going through right now is building it the way you want it to, and then when it serves the business to the level where you can't do what you're doing already, then it's a case of looking at that external funding.
Yes, exactly. It's a tool in the toolkit. It's not a goal in itself.
I like that, tool in the toolkit. And for you, what does going to market look like? What channels have you found to work best? Is it a case of you have your sales team, you go out, you schedule meetings directly, or trade shows are working? What does that look like? Because as you said, you're in a market of one, you're in a blue ocean. So how do you get people into that blue ocean when maybe it's something that they haven't thought about before?
Well, you know what's the funny thing? We didn't share on social media that this product is accessible or anything like that. We're not doing that right now, but we're talking about the problem in social media, in my personal accounts. The company has its own website, so people find us when they search certain keywords, which we've seen. Basically, they look for decision intelligence or ontologies or knowledge graph that are time aware and things like that. They come to us, but the 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 users we have right now on the platform, they basically organically met. Like there were no setup. We didn't reach for them. We don't have any cold outreach program or anything like that. Actually, we don't have a go-to-market team that can activate whatever we need to activate. So that area for us is still on standby. We're building the product, but we're trying to grow it organically. And I think there's a challenge there, but it's also nice to see when you talk to someone. I was introduced to an executive, and I talked with him about what we're doing, and he said, "That's exactly what I want." I was like, "Are you sure this is exactly what you need? So can we see how you do your business, and or how can you make some decisions?" And by seeing what we do, that was it. Like they just they got it, and they signed up. So I believe I need more of those stories to feel more confident that this is what the market wants, and we're building toward that. But right now, every conversation we had with a person who was introduced or we just met tells me this is what the market wants. So I think we are on the right path, and very, very soon we'll do that go-to-market strategy, and then we'll see how we can share more or share it with the world and tell the world this is really what we do and this is who we are, and you need to actually use and be part of this platform.
It's intriguing because I imagine that with your own go-to-market strategy, you can use your product to
Yes.
forecast and predict certain pathways. If we go towards, I don't know, you might pick up 5 different verticals, and then you can predict based off of a moderate and aggressive lens what that might look like and how that works into your 3 and 10 year strategy. And I imagine, probably, I'm speculating here, that within your 3-year strategy, your roadmap there is that go-to-market element labeled in it, I don't know, month 6 or month 12 of 36, and then how that positions and changes the business. It must be quite exciting being able to use your own product to look at how that forecasts. And I'd be intrigued, and I'm sure as the data expands, you mentioned something that you've been really working on since the start of this year. So the more data you have, the more feedback you have, therefore the accuracy of the results compared to the beta that you're looking at, that's going to be a real strong measurement that you're going to be looking at. And for businesses, at least for mine, the accuracy of the predictions that you're making here, that's really one of the core selling points that I would be looking at if I was
Yes.
the end consumer.
Yes, exactly. So we are partially able to use our own product because we don't have completeness of data. And the completeness comes when we have business development and account executives who would actually do the work and help us implement and execute the strategy. So there's a piece of strategy so data, strategy development, which is the decision, and then the execution. And that's the closed loop. And then execution generates data that gets you to adjust the strategy, and then you execute. In our case, we're only able to predict some of the strategy, but we're not able to get the execution, so we cannot do the proper strategy again, or at least come with a great decision. So our data is not complete. That's what I'm saying. we're not our customer. Like our company is not a Fortune 1000. We don't have multiple business units. We don't have multiple systems of record. We're still early, but we will get there. And that's one of the reasons why we need to be very deliberate about how we would approach the SMEs and the SMBs in the next few years.
Yeah, I suppose as you were saying, you mentioned the client you spoke about, they've got data since 2007. If they've got 19 years worth of data to backlog to, then the predictability of your product is going to be significantly stronger than a startup with 18 months worth of data. That there's less mathematical equations that can be created and looked at there. So exciting stuff there. I'm intrigued, taking your lens, everything you've looked at working in the startup world, what you're building here. You also mentioned that you have, I don't want to misrepresent, but you have an offshore tech business still based in Tunisia. Is that correct?
So that's a different story, but I can tell you more about that if you don't mind. But yeah, so we
Go for
have
it, please. Let's hear.
yeah, 2017, I co-founded the company with my current partner right now. It's still active. It's a business right now. It's a US based company. It operates in multiple countries. So we are heavily present in North Africa. So we have Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco. We have a contract with Nigeria as well. What the business does is really simple. I back in like 10 years ago or over 10 years ago, what's very valuable was having valuable data. And valuable data is data that is rare, hard to find, and extremely hard to process. And I stumbled upon the supply chain data for the pharmaceutical industry. It's very hard to find, rare, and extremely valuable for customers. So we built a product around owning the data, which is that's our raw material. So we now own data of the pharmaceutical supply chain in certain countries, the countries that I just mentioned. Basically, from the moment a patient or a customer goes to a pharmacy, orders a product, we know the journey of that product, how it went to that pharmacy, from which distribution center. So we know all of that supply chain information all the way down to the customer who bought it. But what is important and relevant from that data is for our customers are big pharmas. So think of Pfizer and Sanofi and GSK. They need that information to a refined version of that information to help them make decisions. So this is what we built. It's more of a business intelligence analytics platform that uses that pharmaceutical supply chain information to tell them about marketing insights, how's your product or new product or campaigns are doing in certain regions across the country or across countries, and about manufacturing and inventory management. How is your supply chain performance, basically, in a way, because we know products are probably going expired in certain regions, or you have more demands than your products because your competitors are being ordered, not your product are being ordered because your products are not available in that region. So you need to focus there. Or insights about manufacturing, which product should you create next, because not all manufacturers in big pharma owns all products, pharmaceutical products, right? So you have certain ones who dominate certain products. But if we see that the in the basket of the customer, he bought this product A from company A and product B from company B, and that's 30% of all the time when they buy product A, usually it's accompanied by product B. We can determine that, well, there's an opportunity for you here to also create that product B and not give that money away to the competition. So there are these insights that helps these pharmaceutical companies. That's the company, and it operates mostly in Algeria and Tunisia and Morocco, and we have a certain penetration in Nigeria. We're focusing to grow in Jordan as well in the next, I think, 18 months.
Fascinating. There's a reason why data overtook oil is the most valuable
Yeah.
resource in the world, right there, which is fantastic. I'm intrigued. I would love to get your take. How do you think AI is personally going to evolve over the next 12 months?
I mean, the honest answer, I don't know. If I knew, I would be rich. I would be richer. But I would say what's going to be interesting over the next few months is what we're seeing right now, where the battle of models are a little bit um, uh, not going as aggressive as it was. Like model company or models, proprietary models are not being very aggressive. Even the ones that been more aggressive, you know, with the Fable and model from Anthropic and the Mythos model, they had issues with compliance and
Mm-hmm.
recognition. So what I think we will see is more of a how can you use the current models in a much more better way, and we've seen that. We've seen some companies going providing value with previous models. So in a way, the model itself is getting is achieved a state where we can create and generate certain value out of it without having to need much more specialized or much more advanced models. Which I don't know if that's really what will happen, but I think that's the right mindset. Because if you think about intelligence in general, we have these intelligent algorithms that help us to create outcomes that we it's very hard for us to create by hand. So that's why we have the machine learning algorithms or the simulation algorithms, the optimization algorithms. And I think LLM are in that space where they are good at generating information that is, we know how fundamentally they work. They are not a mathematical optimizer or solver, but they are more of a statistical model that is guessing. So if we know how we use them, do we really care about how the actual model is being like their performance should it get higher or better? I think we reached that point where we know what they do, we know how they work. The current ones are actually producing decent information, so I'm not quite sure that's where we are, but where we would go. But what I think is very important is the infrastructure for them and the unit economics for them. What's the ongoing pricing? How can we reduce the price of inference, which is very expensive because if you have the model it's fixed, you already have it. So why does it cost so much to run those tokens or to run the model? I think that's going to be interesting. But from my perspective, the what would be very interesting, and this is what I would bet on, is composing these different AI workloads instead of betting everything on one AI workload, which is LLMs, which most companies or some companies did, and they failed miserably. There are very interesting names you would remember in 2022, but they're gone now, right? Because they bet on that chatbot experience, on that LLM wrapper experience. That's not the right thing. The right thing, in my opinion, is to find the best outcome that humans would like to see or to achieve and reverse engineer what would be the right path or workloads to use. LLMs most likely would be there because we are humans. We communicate using language. That's the interface that we want, and that's the interface that could be used across these different AI workloads. And that's how we're using LLMs is to glue these different AI workloads. But there are other workloads that are important. When you're thinking about forecast, LLMs are terrible at forecasting. When you're thinking
Mm-hmm.
about optimization, they are not built for that. So you need to use different workloads. So I think what will happen is that we will see a big focus and shift from big companies toward combining these different AI workloads and updating or evolving the experience that the human used to have with certain systems. Think of business intelligence, BI. We used to have all of these reporting tools, Tableau and Power BI and others. And over the last few years, I've seen a big rise of these dynamic business intelligence. Business intelligence is basically a way to tell a story on your data, right? And there are certain art, but there are certain formalisms to it. And there are companies like Hex, for instance. It's a very interesting company. They are a dashboarding company. If you really dumb it down, they have a business intelligence suite, but it's much more interesting than the Tableau and the Power BI approach in a way that is very close to the engineer. It's dynamic, and they embraced LLMs in a very interesting way. So I see that shift that happened to BI would happen to other workloads too, where the experience would become customizable, unique to the user.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
And just kind of taking a step back a little bit as to what you spoke about, talking about how LLMs are used, talking about optimizations and forecasting and predicting, they are pretty awful at that. And it's interesting. And I used this example with someone recently. If you were to ask Claude about how food tastes, it's never ever going to know how it is. You want to elevate that, you can talk about what sex like. It can never actually know what these experiences are like, but it can use the web, source this data, and get articles, reports, insights, videos from what people have said, and then summarizes it itself. And fundamentally, where the LLMs are, and you ask it personal questions about yourself or relationships, it will never be able to get that nuanced insight there. And that's why I feel I guess it's the emotional intelligence gap. It's the actual knowledge and experience from feeling that's where we're going to see the biggest gap being shrunk in the next coming period. And there are articles out there from big researchers and publishers and the actual platforms themselves, Anthropic, they're talking about the gap of emotional intelligence amongst these platforms is probably the gap that's being shrunk the quickest, because quite often that's where people are really leveraging these tools and these platforms with personal insight and data as time progresses. So I'm intrigued, and I liked what you said there. If I knew where these platforms are going over the next 12 months, I'd be far richer than I am right now. We're all speculating at the moment, and fundamentally, probably I'm guessing 90% of what we believe is probably going to be further from the truth than what we assume, because the predictions that we're making and how quickly things are changing, it felt like a bit of an arms race a few months ago, and it's massively slowed down because the gap in which the platforms have moved at over the last 6 months has massively shifted compared to where we were a year ago.
But here's something you mentioned that's interesting, because I took at my predictions from the perspective of enterprise use cases, which is LLMs are the really orchestrators and good at orchestrating, but I would see more composition of AI workloads to help make decisions, because agents that are being implemented every company right now are executing decisions at machine speed. So we still need a good decision. We still need how to kind of come up with a good prediction model or forecasting model or a simulation model. AI agents are not good at that. So there will be some tendency to compose those. What you mentioned is a perspective of individual customers who are currently using LLMs to try to understand more themselves or to understand their families or their relationships. And for that, LLMs need to have much more information about our world, our sensory information, so taste, feeling, things like that. And those are two, different perspectives, but I think they are right in their own terms. But it speaks to how popular LLMs became. Even though we think it's popular, there's another thing that I think we're both aware, like not everyone knows about what's going on with AI. I think there are parts of the world that are still behind. They don't have access to the latest model. They don't even have access to this experience that we're talking about here. So there is.
Yeah, absolutely. And equally, there's people who are resistant to adopting AI and these platforms. They just don't want to change their taste buds, so to speak, which is, that's it. It's not for everyone. Quentin,
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. What's next for you, and where can people find you?
All right, so you can find me at syntaxia.com. That's our website. You can find me on LinkedIn, my social media, X as well. I'm active on X. And I write every month some technical essays on Kasseh.com. What's next for us is you'll hear more about decision intelligence platform, about what Syntaxia can do, what we can do right now for go-to-market teams, and what we can do next for the financial departments and so on. So I'm very excited about that, and I'm very excited to share with you what's going to happen by the end of the year. Maybe we can talk again in a few months.
That'll be a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the podcast.